Number 15. The Cartier Halo Tiara. Start with the one almost everyone already recognizes. King George VI bought this diamond band from Cartier in 1936 for his wife, the future Queen Mother, spending roughly $7,000 at the time. It features 739 brilliant cut diamonds and 149 baguette cut diamonds set across 16 graduated scrolls. The Queen Mother passed it to Princess Elizabeth as an 18th birthday gift in 1944, and Elizabeth never once wore it in public. By the time real glamour returned after the war, she already had access to grander state jewels, so the tiara went to other family members instead. Princess Margaret at the 1953 coronation, then Princess Anne in the early 1970s. It disappeared from view again until 2011, when Catherine Middleton chose it for her wedding at Westminster Abbey, watched by more than 2 billion people. A modest 1930s wedding gift, never worn by the woman who owned it for nearly 7 decades, ended up as one of the most photographed tiaras in modern history. It has not been seen in public since that wedding day, which means it has now spent more of its life hidden away than it has spent on display. Elizabeth had the option to reach for it at any point across 7 decades and chose other pieces every single time, which makes its eventual role as a wedding centerpiece feel almost accidental rather than planned. Number 14. The County of Lincoln Diamond Bandeau. This one has an almost identical story to the Halo Tiara, just with a different bride at the end of it. Gerard built the bandeau in 1932 around an older diamond brooch that had been a wedding gift to Queen Mary back in 1893. Elizabeth inherited it when Mary died in 1953, along with dozens of other pieces. She never wore it once. The bandeau sat in the vaults for 85 years, so long that most royal watchers had forgotten it existed, until Meghan Markle chose it for her wedding to Prince Harry in 2018. Worn under a long veil at St. George's Chapel. 2 royal brides, 2 tiaras Elizabeth owned but never touched herself, both making their real public debut on someone else's wedding day. That pattern shows up again and again across this list. Jewelry Elizabeth kept simply as an asset to lend rather than something she reached for personally. What makes this one slightly different is how long it sat completely forgotten by the public. The Halo Tiara at least had a handful of family members wearing it in the decades between Elizabeth's ownership and Kate's wedding. This bandeau had none of that. It went straight from an 1893 brooch to an 85-year silence to a single global broadcast, with nothing in between. Number 13. The Strathmore Rose Tiara. The Earl of Strathmore commissioned this tiara in 1923 as a wedding gift for his daughter, the future Queen Mother. It features 5 diamond roses mounted on a floral band, each one detachable and wearable as a separate brooch, with 2 interchangeable frames that let the wearer switch between a low 1920s bandeau style and a traditional upright tiara. The young Duchess of York loved it and wore it constantly through the 1920s. Once her husband unexpectedly became King George VI in 1937, the tiara suddenly felt too delicate for a queen consort, and it disappeared from public view so completely that rumors spread it had fallen apart in storage. High-resolution photographs taken for a royal jewelry archive years later proved it was perfectly intact. After the Queen Mother died in 2002, Elizabeth inherited it, and, true to the pattern, never wore it either. It finally reappeared in November 2023, worn by Catherine at a state banquet for South Korea, exactly 100 years after the Earl first gave it to his daughter. That 100-year gap is what makes this piece stand out from the others. Most hidden tiaras on this list reappear because someone simply chose to revive them. This one reappeared on almost the exact centennial of the original gift, which royal commentators have pointed to as a deliberate symbolic choice rather than a coincidence. It also helps that the tiara survived in such good condition despite sitting unworn for a full century. Royal jewelers periodically inspect and maintain pieces even while they sit in storage, which is part of why a tiara nobody had seen in generations was still ready to wear the moment Catherine decided to bring it out. Number 12. The Lotus Flower Tiara. This piece did not start out as a tiara at all. The Duke of York gave his wife a diamond and pearl necklace in 1923, bought from Gerard for the equivalent of roughly $50,000 today. 6 months later, the young Duchess sent it back and asked the jewelers to rebuild it into a tiara featuring lotus flower motifs rising into diamond arches, topped with pearls. She wore it in several early portraits, then handed it to Princess Margaret in 1959. Margaret made it one of her signature pieces through the 1960s and 1970s, and even loaned it out for a family wedding in 1993. After Margaret died in 2002, most people assumed the tiara had stayed with her children. Then in 2013, the Duchess of Cambridge showed up at a diplomatic reception wearing it. Margaret had returned the piece to the royal vaults before her death, meaning it landed back with Elizabeth, who inherited it, and once again, never wore it herself. A necklace that became a tiara then belonged to 3 different women across 3 generations before the original owner ever wore it once, is an unusually tangled path even by the standards of this list. Most pieces here simply sat in storage. This one actively traveled between family members for decades while somehow still managing to skip Elizabeth entirely. The Art Deco styling also makes this tiara noticeably different from the heavier, older pieces most associated with Elizabeth's own reign, which may partly explain why it never became part of her personal rotation, even after 2 other family members had already proven how well it photographed. Number 11. The Oriental Circlet Tiara. Prince Albert commissioned this tiara for Queen Victoria, making it one of the older pieces in the entire royal collection. Its design draws on Mughal-inspired motifs, a departure from the typical European scroll and floral patterns found on most tiaras of that century. The Queen Mother made it one of her own favorites, wearing it regularly across decades of official portraits and state events. Elizabeth inherited access to it and wore it exactly 1 single time in her entire life. 1 appearance across a 70-year reign is a remarkable statistic for a tiara this historically significant. Most jewelry on this list stayed hidden because Elizabeth never connected with it personally. This one seems to have been the opposite, a piece she genuinely could have worn more that simply never made it back into rotation after that first outing. Prince Albert had a habit of commissioning jewelry with genuine artistic ambition rather than simply following royal convention, and this tiara's Mughal-inspired styling reflects exactly that instinct. Losing track of a piece this design forward for the better part of a century says something about how easily even significant jewelry can slip out of a 50 tiara rotation. Because the Queen Mother wore it so consistently, photographs of the tiara are not hard to find, which makes Elizabeth's single appearance in it even more noticeable by comparison. It sits in an unusual category of its own on this list, a tiara that was never actually forgotten, just never chosen again. Number 10. Princess Alice's Meander Tiara. This tiara carries real Greek royal history. Its Greek key design, lined in diamonds and topped with a laurel wreath, belonged to Princess Alice of Battenberg, the mother of Prince Philip. She gave it to Princess Elizabeth as a wedding gift in 1947, a piece now valued at roughly $200,000. Elizabeth never wore it publicly, not even once. It disappeared into storage until 1972, when it was officially passed to Princess Anne, who wore it constantly for state functions and official portraits. The tiara found its real spotlight in 2011, when Anne's daughter, Zara Tyndall, wore it for her wedding to Mike Tyndall. 3 generations, 1 tiara, and the woman it was originally intended for never wore it a single time before passing it along. Princess Alice's own life adds another layer to the story. She spent much of her later years dedicated to charitable work and religious life rather than royal appearances, which may partly explain why a gift meant to symbolize her Greek heritage never actually made it onto the head of the person she gave it to. Anne wearing the tiara for decades of state functions gave it a completely different public identity than the one it started with, more associated with her own steady, working royal reputation than with the Greek ancestry it was originally meant to honor. Number 9. The Cartier Bracelet Bandeau. Between 1923 and 1925, the Duke of York gave his wife 5 separate Cartier Art Deco bracelets, 1 in sapphires, 1 in emeralds, 1 in rubies, and 2 entirely in diamonds. Individually, jewelry appraisers now value each bracelet at roughly $150,000 to $300,000. In 1925, Cartier built a custom frame that let any 3 of the bracelets combine into a full tiara, a genuinely rare piece of transformable jewelry. The young Duchess wore the combined tiara constantly through the late 1920s and early 1930s, switching gemstones for different events. Once she became Queen Consort in 1937, the playful bracelet-tiara hybrid disappeared from public life. Elizabeth inherited the bracelets decades later and wore them often, but always as separate bracelets, never once reassembling the bandeau. Queen Camilla began wearing individual pieces from the set starting in 2024. The original connecting frame itself has not been seen in years, and nobody outside the royal household has confirmed where it currently is. This is one of the few pieces on this list where the mystery is mechanical rather than sentimental. Every individual gemstone is accounted for and regularly worn. It is only the specific metal frame that lets those pieces snap together into a tiara that has actually gone missing from the public record. A small, easily overlooked object holding the key to reviving one of the most inventive designs in the entire royal collection. 5 separate bracelets, each valuable enough to stand on its own, being deliberately engineered to combine into a single tiara, says something about how playful royal jewelry design could get in the 1920s, well before the more formal ceremonial pieces that came to define later decades. Number 8. The Teck Crescent Tiara. This tiara traces back to Princess Mary Adelaide, Duchess of Teck, who built it from diamonds inherited from her aunt. The finished design holds 20 diamond crescents wrapped around 3 diamond roses, and the crescents can flip forward or backward to give the piece 2 completely different looks. Queen Mary owned it through the 1930s, and no photograph exists of her ever wearing it. She passed it to the Queen Mother in 1936, who wore it exactly once, at a banquet in Canada in 1939, then never again. It sat untouched for more than 60 years. After the Queen Mother died in 2002, the tiara became one of 3 major pieces placed on long-term loan to the Duchess of Cornwall. The other 2 eventually made public appearances. This one still has not, sitting in the collection as one of the few tiaras on this entire list that has genuinely never been photographed on a living person. The reversible crescent design also makes this piece more technically impressive than most tiaras from the same era, since very few Victorian jewelers built adjustable mechanisms into their work at all. A tiara, this cleverly engineered going unworn for the better part of a century, is one of the stranger contradictions in the entire collection. Princess Mary Adelaide herself was known within the family for repurposing older heirlooms into new designs, rather than commissioning entirely new pieces. And this tiara reflects that same practical, resourceful approach passed down from a generation of royal women well before Elizabeth's own reign began. Number 7. The Aquamarine Ribbon Tiara. Elizabeth commissioned this piece herself from Gerard in 1957, built specifically to complete a matching aquamarine and diamond necklace and earring set gifted to her by the President of Brazil for her 1953 coronation. Interwoven diamonds and aquamarines give the tiara a delicate, ribbon-like appearance, unlike most of the heavier pieces in her collection. Despite commissioning it personally, Elizabeth wore the tiara publicly exactly once, during a tour of Canada in the summer of 1970. After that single appearance, it went back into storage and simply never came out again during the rest of her reign, a gap of more than 50 years. It was eventually passed to her daughter-in-law, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, who has also rarely worn it. A piece Elizabeth cared enough about to design from scratch still ended up as one of the most hidden tiaras in her entire 50-piece collection. Commissioning a tiara from nothing is a genuinely rare move within the collection, since most pieces on this list were inherited or gifted rather than built to order. That makes the single 1970 appearance even more puzzling. Elizabeth clearly had a specific vision for how this piece should look, and then set that vision aside for the rest of her life, almost immediately after seeing it worn. Number 6. The Delhi Durbar Tiara. Queen Mary built this tiara in 1911 by dismantling an earlier piece and rebuilding every diamond into a towering circlet, designed specifically to be seen from across a massive ceremonial hall in India during an event called the Delhi Durbar. It was jewelry built for spectacle on a scale most tiaras never attempt. In 1946, Mary placed it on permanent loan to the Queen Mother for a South Africa tour, and the Queen Mother wore it exactly once, at the opening of Parliament in Cape Town. It then sat untouched for 55 years. Elizabeth inherited it in 2002 and never wore it herself, instead passing it to Camilla, who wore it once at a Norwegian state banquet in 2005 and has not worn it since. King George V reportedly once called it his wife's best tiara. More than a century after it was built, it still gets treated as something almost too significant to wear casually. Jewelry built for a single specific ceremony rarely finds a second purpose, and this tiara's entire design reflects that. It was never meant to be an everyday piece, which may be exactly why 3 generations of royal women have each worn it only once. A tiara engineered for maximum spectacle does not leave much room for a quiet, ordinary outing. Number 5. The Greville Honeycomb Tiara. A wealthy society hostess named Dame Margaret Greville left her entire jewelry collection to the Queen Mother in 1942. Among the pieces was this bold, geometric Art Deco tiara, originally built in 1921 and refined again in 1953 to sharpen its design. For the next 50 years, the Queen Mother wore it constantly, at state banquets, at the theater, even during private family gatherings. It became one of her defining visual signatures, rather than a rare special occasion piece. Elizabeth inherited the entire Greville collection in 2002 and never wore this specific tiara publicly, not once. Instead, she placed it on long-term loan to Camilla in 2005, and Camilla adopted it the same way the Queen Mother once had, wearing it repeatedly for major state occasions. A tiara built for constant, everyday royal life somehow skipped an entire generation before landing back in exactly that role. It is worth pointing out how unusual that skip actually is. Most tiaras on this list stayed hidden because nobody wanted the responsibility of reviving them. This one had already proven itself as a genuinely practical, wearable piece for 50 straight years before Elizabeth inherited it, which makes her decision to set it aside completely feel far more deliberate than accidental. Number 4. The Greville Emerald Kokoshnik Tiara. Dame Margaret Greville commissioned this tiara from Boucheron in 1919, built around a single emerald weighing 93.7 carats, framed by diamonds arranged in the sharp, commanding lines of a Russian Kokoshnik design. It is one of the boldest single pieces in the entire royal collection. When Greville died in 1942, the tiara essentially vanished from public knowledge. For 76 years, there were no confirmed photographs, no public sightings, nothing beyond rumor among royal jewelry historians, even after Elizabeth inherited it in 2002. Then in October 2018, Princess Eugenie wore it to her own wedding at St. George's Chapel, and the massive emerald caught the morning light for the first time in nearly 8 decades. Elizabeth had held on to one of the boldest tiaras in her entire collection for 16 years without ever wearing it once, then let it resurface on exactly the kind of occasion built for that kind of grand reveal. A single 93.7 carat emerald is large enough that jewelry experts consider it a genuinely rare stone on its own, separate entirely from the tiara built around it. Keeping a gem of that scale, locked away and completely undocumented for over 7 decades, is close to unheard of for a royal family whose jewelry is otherwise cataloged in extraordinary detail. Number 3. The Sapphire Sunray bandeau. This tiara features a flexible diamond frame built into bold sunray lines, all radiating out from a central sapphire and diamond cluster that can also detach and function as a brooch. Exactly how it entered the royal collection remains genuinely unclear, with historical records pointing in different directions. What is clear is that Princess Margaret made it her own personal signature piece through the 1950s and early 1960s, wearing it on a Caribbean tour in 1958 and to a royal wedding in Norway in 1961. After the early 1960s, the tiara disappeared from public view entirely. No photographs, no confirmed sightings. Nothing for more than 60 years. Most jewelry historians believe it likely still sits somewhere in the royal vaults, but unlike most other pieces on this list, nobody can even confirm that with certainty. This might be the closest thing to a genuinely lost tiara still technically owned by the family. What sets this piece apart from the rest of the list is the missing paperwork at the very start of its story. Every other tiara here has at least one clearly documented origin point: a commission, a wedding gift, a specific jeweler. This one enters the historical record already in Margaret's possession, with no confirmed answer for how it got there in the first place. Number 2. Princess Margaret's Persian Turquoise parure. Queen Mary originally purchased this large turquoise tiara and matching jewelry suite from Gerard. King George V gifted the full set to the future Queen Mother as a wedding present in 1923, valued today at several $100,000. She wore the vivid blue stones constantly through the 1920s and 1930s, then retired them entirely once she became Queen Consort in 1937. In 1951, she gave the whole parure to Princess Margaret for her 21st birthday. And Margaret wore it with real confidence for decades afterward. After Margaret died in 2002, most of her jewelry went to public auction at Christie's to help cover death duties, each piece clearly documented and sold. This particular parure was never on that list. No sale record, no public disclosure, nothing. Jewelry historians are split on whether it returned to the royal collection without fanfare or stayed in the private hands of Margaret's own children. And more than 2 decades later, nobody has definitively settled the question. The sheer scale of the set makes its disappearance even stranger. A full parure this size, a tiara plus matching necklace, earrings, and bracelets built around vivid turquoise stones is not the kind of jewelry that easily slips through the cracks of an otherwise meticulously documented auction. Something that visible, going fully unaccounted for, points to a deliberate choice rather than an oversight. Number 1, the double Meander tiara. And here is the piece with the strangest, least resolved story of them all. Most historians trace this tiara back to Dame Margaret Greville's 1942 bequest to the Queen Mother, a collection now valued at well over $10 million in total. The design features 2 rows of diamond Greek key patterns topped with a dramatic diamond aigrette. It almost never appeared in public. Its only solidly documented appearance came in 1961 when the Queen Mother loaned it to a jewelry exhibition, giving experts one rare chance to study it up close before it vanished again for decades. Then in 2005, at a state banquet in China, Princess Anne wore a tiara with a nearly identical double Meander design. Royal jewelry historians noticed immediately, but the palace never confirmed or denied whether it was the same piece. To this day, nobody has definitively proven it. Every other tiara on this list eventually surfaced, got photographed, and had its story confirmed one way or another. This one is the exception, a piece that may have reappeared briefly and without confirmation on a different tiara entirely, and then slipped straight back into decades of silence, with the question never actually answered. That refusal to confirm or deny is exactly what separates this piece from everything else on this list. 14 other tiaras eventually got their moment of clarity: a wedding appearance, a state banquet, a museum exhibition that settled the question of where they had been. This one sits in permanent limbo instead. The single tiara out of Elizabeth's entire 50-piece collection that even now refuses to give up its answer. 15 tiaras, and only a handful of clear answers between them. Some finally reappeared on the next generation of royal brides, and some are still sitting in the dark, waiting for someone to finally ask the right question and get a straight answer back.